The sterile scent of antiseptics lingered in the air as Nurse Anna Monroe stepped into room 407. The man lying in the hospital bed was Grant Carter, a millionaire whose name once echoed in elite circles but now was nothing more than a whisper of the past. His body, motionless, had become a prison, his mind trapped in a year-long slumber. Anna had seen many coma patients, but something about this case felt off. The reports were vague, the details suspicious, and every instinct in her told her that Grant's story was far from ordinary.
Hello, I'm the storyteller of the channel, and I would like to ask for a second of your time to subscribe, activate the notification bell, and like the video so that YouTube can take our story to more people who are passionate about stories like this. Thank you, and without further ado, let's continue with our story.
Days turned into weeks, and Anna found herself drawn to his bedside more often than necessary. She wasn't just a nurse following protocol. She felt a strange pull toward Grant, as if his silence was speaking to her. She would adjust his pillows, check his vitals, and talk to him as if he could hear her. They say coma patients sometimes remember voices, she whispered one evening, watching his still face for any reaction. But nothing, just the beeping of the monitors and the steady rhythm of his breath. Yet, deep down, she knew something was stirring beneath that silence. The official story was that Grant had lost control of his car on a rainy night, skidding off the road in what was ruled a tragic accident. But Anna had worked in the ICU long enough to know when details didn't add up. His injuries were inconsistent with a simple crash. The way his body had been found, the location, the condition of the vehicle, it all nagged at her like an unsolved puzzle. And then there was his half-brother, Nathan, whose visits were few and far between, his demeanor too rehearsed, his concern too artificial. One night, while adjusting Grant's fore, Anna noticed something strange. His fingers twitched, just a slight movement, barely perceptible, but enough to send a chill down her spine. She leaned in, heart pounding, and called his name softly. Nothing. But then, as she watched, she saw it again. His eyelids fluttered, his fingers curling ever so slightly. The doctors had said he was stable but unresponsive. Was he fighting to come back? Was he trapped inside his own body, aware but unable to wake? Anna couldn't shake the feeling that Grant was trying to reach out. That night, she stayed longer than usual, watching him, speaking to him, urging him to wake up. "You're not alone," she whispered, her fingers grazing his hand. She thought she imagined it, but she swore she felt a tiny squeeze in return. It was fleeting, barely there, but enough to confirm what she had suspected all along. Grant Carter wasn't lost. He was trying to come back. With renewed determination, Anna made it her mission to monitor every tiny change, every flicker of movement, every breath that seemed deeper than before. She documented the smallest signs, pushing the doctors to reevaluate his condition. Some dismissed it as wishful thinking, but she knew better. Something was happening, something beyond medical charts and probabilities. And if she was right, Grant Carter wasn't just waking up. He was coming back with a story to tell. A story that, once revealed, might shake everything to its core. At first, the changes were almost imperceptible. A flicker of his eyelids, a slight twitch of his fingers, small details that anyone else might have overlooked. But Anna noticed. She had been by Grant's side long enough to sense the shift. It wasn't just reflex, it was intention. Something inside him was stirring, fighting to break through the darkness that had held him captive for a year. And she wasn't about to let that fight go unnoticed. She documented every little progress, pressing the doctors to reevaluate his condition. Most remained skeptical, dismissing her concerns as false hope. But hope wasn't just a feeling, it was a force, and Anna believed in it fiercely. One evening, as she sat beside him, reading aloud from the newspaper, she saw it. His lips parted as if struggling to form a sound. She froze. Was he trying to speak? Her heart pounded as she leaned in, waiting, urging him to try. Days passed, and the signs of awakening became stronger. His fingers curled more deliberately, his eyelids fluttered longer, his breathing patterns changed, as if his body was preparing itself for something bigger. Anna refused to let these moments go unnoticed. "Come on, Grant," she whispered one night, squeezing his hand gently. "I know you're in there. You've been fighting this long. Don't stop now." And then it happened. A deep, shaky inhale, his chest rising with an intensity she hadn't seen before. That night, as the hospital halls quieted and the world outside dimmed into silence, Anna sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his. She was about to leave when she felt it, a faint squeeze, stronger than before. She gasped, eyes wide, searching his face. And then, with a slow, deliberate effort, his eyelids lifted, revealing a pair of stormy blue eyes staring back at her. A shiver ran down her spine. He was awake. The beeping of the monitors accelerated, signaling the shift. Nurses and doctors rushed in, voices blurring in the chaos. But Anna couldn't look away. Grant was watching her, his gaze searching, confused, desperate. His lips trembled as if trying to form words, but no sound came. And then, in a raspy whisper, he spoke, the first word he had uttered in over a year. "Help!" The room buzzed with urgency as the medical team surrounded him, running tests, checking vitals. But Anna barely heard them. That one word, so weak yet so full of meaning, echoed in her mind. Help! Not just a plea for assistance, but a warning, a call for someone to listen, a message that something was very, very wrong, and she intended to find out what. Grant Carter's return from the void wasn't just a medical miracle. It was a revelation waiting to unfold. His mind, though foggy, held fragments of something sinister. Faces without names. Voices without clarity. But one thing was certain. His accident had been no accident at all. The moment he whispered that single word, help, Anna knew that waking up was just the beginning. There was a story buried in his silence, and she was determined to uncover it. In the days following his awakening, Grant struggled to piece together the shattered remnants of his memory. At first, it was like chasing shadows, flashes of headlights, the screech of tires, a sickening jolt as the world spun out of control. But then, late one night, the puzzle began assembling itself. He shot up in bed, breathless, gripping Anna's wrist with surprising strength. "Someone tried to kill me," he rasped, his pulse racing. And suddenly, the coma wasn't the mystery anymore. The real question was who wanted him dead. Anna didn't doubt him for a second. She had seen too many cases where the truth was buried under official reports, hidden beneath layers of deception. But Grant was no ordinary man, and this was no ordinary case. With her unwavering presence, she helped him navigate his fractured mind, guiding him through memories that felt like broken glass, sharp, painful, but necessary to piece together. And then, one night, the name surfaced, a whisper in the back of his consciousness. Nathan, his half-brother, the only family he had left. The man who had stood at his bedside with crocodile tears, feigning grief while the truth lay dormant in Grant's unconscious mind. The realization hit like a wrecking ball, leaving him breathless. It made sense now. The inconsistencies in the crash report, the unease Anna had felt every time Nathan visited. The betrayal ran deeper than he could have imagined. Determined to uncover the full truth, Grant and Anna dug deeper, finding cracks in Nathan's carefully constructed lies. Financial records, suspicious transactions, an attempt to seize control of Carter Industries while Grant lay comatose. Every thread unraveled another piece of his deception. And then came the final blow, a security footage file, long buried but not entirely erased, showing a car following Grant's that night. A car Nathan owned. The evidence was damning, but uncovering the truth was one thing. Confronting it? That was something else entirely. And as the weight of betrayal settled over him, Grant realized that waking up had only made him a target once again. Grant had spent his entire life believing that blood meant loyalty. But as he sat in the dim hospital room, staring at the undeniable proof of his brother's betrayal, he realized how wrong he'd been. Nathan hadn't just wanted his company. He wanted him dead. And if Grant had stayed in that coma, his half-brother would have succeeded. His heart pounded with a mix of fury and disbelief. But he wasn't powerless anymore. He was awake. And now, It was his turn to fight back. Anna stood by his side, unwavering, as they devised a plan. Going to the police wasn't enough. Nathan was influential, slippery, and dangerous. They needed more than accusations. They needed an airtight case. With every piece of evidence they collected, the walls around Nathan's perfect illusion began to crumble. The financial transactions, the doctor reports, the recovered footage, every detail painted a clear picture of premeditated murder. And Grant wasn't going to let it go unpunished. The confrontation was inevitable. Grant arranged a meeting, luring Nathan to his estate under the pretense of signing off on business matters. He played the part perfectly, weak, recovering, vulnerable. But inside, his pulse drummed with anticipation. Anna watched from the shadows, recording every word. And then, as expected, Nathan slipped. Arrogance had always been his downfall. "I had no choice," he sneered, his mask finally cracking. "You were in the way, Grant. You always have been." The moment those words left his mouth, the doors burst open. Law enforcement swarmed the room, the evidence damning, the confession undeniable. Nathan's expression morphed from smug confidence to sheer panic as he realized his game was over. Handcuffs clicked around his wrists, and as they dragged him away, he turned to Grant one last time. "This isn't over," he spat, venom in his voice. But Grant just watched, unshaken. It was over. For him, at least. As the dust settled, Grant felt an unfamiliar weight lift off his shoulders. The betrayal still stung, but justice had been served. He turned to Anna, gratitude flooding his eyes. She had stood by him when no one else did. She had fought for him, believed in him. And in that moment, he knew his survival wasn't just about revenge. It was about something much more profound. A second chance, a future, and perhaps something even deeper than that. Something that neither of them could ignore. The storm had passed, but its echoes remained. Grant Carter was no longer the man he was before the coma. He had been broken, betrayed, and nearly killed. But through it all, one person had been there, unwavering and steadfast. Anna Monroe. She wasn't just a nurse. She was his anchor, the one who had believed in him when no one else did. And now, as he stood on the balcony of his estate, gazing at the woman who had saved his life in more ways than one, he knew there was something he couldn't ignore any longer. At first, their connection had been subtle, a deep trust and unspoken understanding. But the more time they spent together, the more undeniable it became. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper, something real. Grant had spent his entire life chasing success, wealth, and power, only to realize that none of it mattered if he had no one to share it with. And now, for the first time, he wasn't afraid to admit that what he truly wanted had been beside him all along. Anna, however, was hesitant. She had always drawn a firm line between personal and professional, and falling for a patient, especially one as powerful as Grant, was never part of her plan. But emotions didn't follow logic, and every stolen glance, every lingering touch, every late-night conversation whispered the truth she had tried so hard to deny. She had fallen for him, too, and there was no turning back. One evening, as they walked along the quiet shore near Grant's estate, he finally spoke the words that had been burning inside him. "I don't want to waste another second pretending this isn't real," he said, turning to face her. "You saved me, Anna. Not just my life, but me. And I don't want a future that doesn't have you in it." The sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. And as she met his gaze, she saw it. Love, raw and unguarded, written all over his face. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "I know this is fast," he admitted, a rare nervousness creeping into his voice. "But life is unpredictable. If I've learned anything, it's that we don't always get second chances. And I don't want to waste mine." He opened the box, revealing a stunning diamond ring, its brilliance reflecting the depth of his feelings. "Anna Monroe," he whispered, "will you build a life with me?" For the first time in her life, Anna was speechless. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that this wasn't just a proposal, it was a promise. A future built on trust, resilience, and love. She didn't need time to think. She already knew the answer. With a trembling smile, she nodded. Yes, she breathed. And the moment those words left her lips, Grant pulled her into his arms, sealing their fate with a kiss. Their journey had been one of pain, betrayal, and survival. But now, as they stood together beneath the stars, there was only one thing left: a new beginning. And for the first time, neither of them had to face the future alone.